This is the Capitol Rundown.
And first of all, artificial intelligence refers to machine-based systems that can make predictions and recommendations.
It will expunge the criminal records of so many Americans with low-level marijuana offenses that haunt them.
There's no case. It's a witch hunt, and we're not going to take it.
It's all straight ahead. The Capitol Rundown starts now.
Good morning and thanks for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klepfer. You've come to the right place for all things political in Michigan, the Capitol Rundown. So let's get you up to speed on the week that was. And we are starting this morning with new poll results from Emerson College and The Hill, showing what Michigan voters think about the presidential election and who should be sitting in the state's soon-to-be open U.S. Senate seat. The Rundown's Ray Sherman has the numbers.
1,000 registered voters were asked who they would vote for in a race between Democrat Alyssa Slotkin and Republican Mike Rogers. The results show Slotkin with a slight edge. 41.6% of registered voters said they would vote for Slotkin, while 39.8% would vote for Rogers. There is also a large 18.6% of voters that are still undecided. The poll took place between April 25th and April 29th and has a margin of error of plus or minus 3%. Slotkin, who has raised $16 million through March 31st, is facing two other Democrats, including actor and activist Hill Harper, the only other member of her party who has raised more than $1 million. Rogers faces another former congressman, Justin Amash, as well as businessman Sandy Pensler and Sherry O'Donnell. Rogers and Pensler have raised about $3 million each. A third former congressman, Peter Meyer, withdrew from the race last week. Both candidates are seeking to replace Senator Debbie Stabenow, who is retiring after 24 years. Voters will choose Democratic and Republican finalists in the August primary, and the winners of each race will square off against each other in the November general election.
And now that the 2024 presidential election has narrowed to an expected rematch between current President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, pollsters are closely watching the potential perils for Mr. Trump if he's convicted in one of his 4 pending criminal trials. That poll asked voters if Mr. Trump is found guilty in the New York criminal trial, how does that impact your likelihood of supporting him for president in 2024? 32% say they are more likely to support Mr. Trump. 29% are less likely to support him, and most, 39%, say it will have no impact. The poll, again, of 1,000 registered voters took place between April 25th and April 29th and has a margin of error of plus or minus 3%. And we will have even more poll results for you coming up a little bit later in this show. Thousands of people gathered at the airport in Freeland, Michigan on Wednesday for a campaign rally by Donald Trump. Wednesdays are important for the former president's campaign since they're the only weekdays when he's not scheduled to be in court for his criminal trial in New York. And that was one of the topics Mr. Trump discussed during his rally, accusing the judge of corruption and calling the prosecutor a Marxist.
There's no case. It's a witch hunt. And we're not going to take it. We're not going to take it. They can't do that to our country. The judge, by the way, is the most conflicted person in the history. I don't think there's ever been a more conflicted judge. Crooked and conflicted. And I'm unconstitutionally gagged. He gagged me. So I'm not even supposed to be, I would say, talking to you because he gagged me.
Well, Mr. Trump also discussed immigration with promises to shut down the border and deport millions of people. On the topic of abortion, the former president praised the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. He said the issue of abortion should be out of the hands of the federal government and back to the states. On the other side of the ticket, both President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are planning to make stops here in the Great Lakes state as they campaign for a second term. The vice president will be in Detroit on Monday. It's part of her economic opportunity tour. The campaign wants to highlight what they say are successes in improving the American economy. President Biden is scheduled to speak at the NAACP Detroit branch's 69th annual Fight for Freedom Fund dinner, and that is happening on May 19th. Coming up next year on the Capitol Rundown, artificial intelligence is everywhere now, and that might not be good for civil rights. That story and a lot more still to come this morning, so keep it right here. Welcome back. On April 29th, the Michigan Civil Rights Commission met to pass resolutions on what they describe as critical civil rights issues facing the state. One of those issues is the emergence of artificial intelligence and how that can hurt civil rights. The Commission's resolution on AI calls for transparency when it comes to the use of the technology in policing. They also say the state attorney general should direct resources to making sure that people's rights aren't violated by the use of AI. But according to John Johnson, the executive director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, the technology goes beyond law enforcement.
It's the algorithms. It's what's being fed into these programmings. And first of all, we know that artificial intelligence refers to machine-based systems that can make predictions and recommendations or decisions. They're used to, again, sort resumes for employers. They're used to decide access to and eligibility for social services. They're used to determine who sees advertisements for jobs, housings, and loans. Used to determine which employees to hire, fire, promote, access to housing and credit, predict crime and risk of recidivism, and even to decide hospital treatment plans and insurance. So, and they work by putting in things like the age, income, zip code of a loan applicant, and reporting back a prediction of that person's outcome, for example.
The director says there's been aggressive action on Capitol Hill to address this problem. At the state level, he says it's going to take education and legislative action to make sure people know about the problem and that the state has the means to fight it.
We did mention that again at our appropriations hearings. It did pique their interest. They wanted to know more about what we were doing. And at this stage, again, it's for us, it's a learning period. It's learning more about it, learning more how it affects the protected classes here in Michigan, which we're charged to investigate the discrimination against them per the Constitution and the Elliott-Larsen Act. No one's going to come to us and say that they were the victim of discrimination based on artificial intelligence. They won't know. We're going to have to be on the lookout for that and look at, was that used perhaps in them being denied a promotion or them being denied opportunity to be hired. That's our job because we're aware of it. And that's why we're about the business of both enforcement and education on this.
Well, coming up, we're going to take a deeper dive into those poll numbers we told you about at the beginning of this show, and our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic will be here to help us do that. That and much more is still ahead. Keep here. Welcome back. As we said at the beginning of the show, new poll results from Emerson College in the Hill were released last week. Here's our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic to take us through more of those numbers.
It doesn't get any closer than this. 45% Mr. Trump, 44% Mr. Biden, 11% on the fence, which means in 4 of the most critical swing states, this race could go either way. The two are basically tied. One of the X factors in this too close to call contest is the third-party candidates, including Robert Kennedy Jr., who gets 5% in Michigan. And when you factor that in, the race between the top 2 contenders still a statistical tie. The most important issue for voters is the economy. Republicans think they're ahead on that front. Democrats believe their stance, however, on saving the democracy favors them, but that finishes a distant second to the economy. With labor voters, another tie. And Mr. Trump holds a 9-point lead with the all-important independent voters. Another X factor, the hush money trial in New York. 50% of the electorate say the trial is appropriate. 43% conclude it's a witch hunt. But if Mr. Trump is convicted, 32% in Michigan would be more likely to vote for him. Only 29% would be less likely, and 39% say it doesn't make any difference. One element also at play, 2 critical issues on 2 different fronts with 2 different results.
If we continue to see issues at the southern border and Republicans really message on that, that could, further hurt Biden. However, if you see more and more of some of these states like Florida, Arizona pass these very stringent abortion bans in their states, that could end up helping the president as well.
When undecided voters were pressed to make a decision, Mr. Trump opens up a 4-point lead, which is just 1 point higher than the margin of error.
And Tim spoke with the Rundown's Jorma Duran about those poll results and why Michigan courts might not have seen the last of the Flint water crisis and former Governor Rick Snyder's administration. Take a listen.
It's time to get updated politically here in the state of Michigan, and nobody better than this guy right here, Tim Skubic, to help us out. Tim, we just saw those new polling numbers showing a tight race for the White House when it comes to Michigan voters, but how serious are the candidates on both sides taking these numbers?
Well, I think the candidates are serious because they know Michigan is in play, and Michigan is one of the steps that you have to take if you want to get to the White House. And so this latest polling data was in the 7 swing states. These are states that could swing either way, Mr. Biden or swing to Mr. Trump, and the swinging in Michigan comes in at 45% Mr. Trump, 44% for Mr. Biden. It's in the margin of error, so it is a statistical dead heat. An X factor in this race in Michigan is the guy by the name of Robert Kennedy Jr. He is in the contest. He will be on the ballot. And if you put him into the equation, what do we get on the other end? Well, he gets 5% of the vote, but it's still a statistical dead heat between Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump. So it's a wash. Michigan clearly is in play. Of all of the states that Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump are competing, these 7 competitive states, it is very close in Michigan. Only a couple of these states, Mr. Trump has a lead, which is just inching beyond the margin of error.
I think that's interesting with the Kennedy factor because it still remains a tie. So he's not really stealing votes from Trump or Biden, or is it one way or the other?
Well, that's a very good question, and people are trying to peel the onion back on this thing. Originally, the popular wisdom is that this hurts Joe Biden. Yeah. But now there's a body of thought that says, you know what, if you really look at the numbers, given the conservative mantra that Mr. Kennedy is spewing on the campaign trail, it's really in the Trump wing of the party, and he's appealing to them. And you know that the Trump people are concerned because why? They're attacking Mr. Kennedy.
Well, there are new reports that a former advisor to Governor Rick Snyder wants to sue Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel and others because of actions they took over the Flint water crisis. What do you know about this?
Well, what we know is that Rich Baird, who was absolutely the closest advisor to Governor Rick Snyder, he and the governor were accused by Attorney General Dana Nessel of wrongdoing, criminal wrongdoing in the Flint water crisis. The courts basically threw out the case because it came from a one-person grand jury, and the state Supreme Court said, nah, you can't do that. So the evidence against them was never presented in a court of law. There was never a jury decision. Mr. Baird would just absolutely, positively love to sit down with Ms. Nessel and negotiate a settlement out of court. I'm not sure Dana Nessel wants to sit in a room with an attorney for Mr. Baird, and so he may have to pay off on his threat to sue her to get the money. He wants $800,000 back of his own money that he says he paid for this, quote, malicious prosecution.
Jorma, Tim, thank you. Coming up next on the Capitol Rundown, if you thought the fight on Capitol Hill was over on who sits in the Speaker's chair, you were wrong. Yeah, the Republican Party is once again at odds with itself, but this time things are a little different. We'll explain when the Rundown returns. On Capitol Hill, Republican lawmakers are threatening their own leader. Again, members of Congress are laying out plans for a vote to remove House Speaker Mike Johnson from the job. Washington, D.C. correspondent Hannah Brandt explains.
We've seen this fight play out before when Republicans removed Speaker Kevin McCarthy. But this time around, it looks like the outcome could be different.
Mike Johnson is not capable of that job. He has proven it over and over again.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is promising to call a vote next week to oust Speaker Mike Johnson.
We need leaders in the House of Representatives that are going to get this done.
Greene says Johnson is failing the House's Republican majority because he led efforts to pass government funding and foreign aid packages with the help of Democrats.
Mike Johnson is giving them everything they want.
Now she's planning to force her colleagues to choose sides in the bitter intra-party battle. Republican Thomas Massie says he'll vote to kick Johnson out because of
betrayals that he's delivered to our party.
But Speaker Johnson brushed off Greene's threat when asked about it on the Hill on News Nation.
Is she a serious lawmaker?
I don't think she's proving to be. No, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about her. I've got to do my job.
And he has reason to feel secure.
This is a vote of conscience.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Democrats will vote to save Johnson because he argues the country can't afford another messy speaker fight.
Preventing us from delivering real and meaningful results.
And Speaker Johnson also made the case for avoiding that.
Descending into chaos and closing the House down and vacating the chair again is exactly the opposite of what needs to happen.
So far, only 2 other Republicans have publicly expressed support for Green's effort to remove Speaker Johnson. In Washington, I'm Hannah Brandt.
Well, marijuana is legal in Michigan, but the federal government hasn't caught up yet. Or has it? Well, coming up, we'll tell you about possible changes coming to national marijuana laws. Stay right here. Welcome back. The United States Drug Enforcement Administration is planning to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug. And if it does, it will be a historic shift to generations of American drug policy that could have wide ripple effects across the country. The new classification would recognize the medical uses of cannabis and acknowledge it as less potential for abuse than some of the nation's most dangerous drugs. However, it would not legalize marijuana for recreational use. The White House Office of Management and Budget still has to review the plan. On Wednesday, Senators Chuck Schumer, Ron Wyden, and Cory Booker, with a coalition of other Democratic senators, officially reintroduced a bill to federally legalize marijuana.
It will expunge the criminal records of so many Americans with low-level marijuana offenses that haunt them and inhibit them for decades, preventing them from getting good jobs and leading good, strong lives. And it will help our country close the book once and for all on the awful and harmful and failed war on drugs, which all too often has been nothing more than a war on Americans of color.
In Michigan, recreational marijuana use has been legal since 2018. Well, if you are interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, we've got just the thing for you. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just one email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. This will take you to the sign up page, or you can head to WLNS.com/newsletter. And that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown. We'll see you all again right here next week.